Regina Keels, an English teacher at the St. Croix Educational Complex and the lead coordinator of 1848 Emancipation. You know, I've always loved the stories of St. Croix. I was born and raised here and grew up listening to many of them from people in my family. My mother in particular was a great lover of these stories, and she would gather us on the porch at night, all the lights are off, and she'd tell us Jumbi stories. So from the very beginning, I understood the power of stories, why stories are important, how it brings people together. Now that brings me to why I did this project. I wanted to do something to bring students together with our history and our culture, and because I'm an English teacher, with our literature. The first person who came to mind was Richard Schroeder, our iconic Prussian writer. I called him up, I told him my idea of having students read some of his poems about 1848 and doing something that had some lasting legacy to read. He was very excited. And we met, social distance of course, and he gave me 4 poems, and he gave me his blessings to use them as I see fit. I wanted to do 2 things. 1, take the work of Richard Schroeder and put it in the hands of young people. And 2, have them interact with the writing in such a way that they learn an appreciation for our own literature as they learn an appreciation for our history and our culture. I was thinking of it in griot fashion, where a griot comes to the point where they have to pass on their legacy. This is where Richard Schroeder passes the torch to young people, the story of emancipation, and also the idea where the young people have their parts to play in our story of freedom, liberation, and emancipation.
Hey, are you ready to tell our emancipation story?
I guess, but what's the point? It's history, it's a past. No one cares about that.
You don't think that with everything going on with Black Lives Matter, racism right here on our beautiful island, that it's not important to us? Sure it is. It's about our freedom that we've been fighting for from Africa to now. We need to know the past in order to have the inspiration to continue what was started right here in Frederickstead.
You're right. St. Croix changed hands more than any other island. Several colonial masters, starting with Spain, England, Dutch, France, the Knights of Malta, then Denmark, and now America. It was the Dutch who brought over the first slaves, but it was the Danes who perfected slavery and made the sugarcane industry a pulse right up there with Antigua and Barbados. Imagine leaving your home, family, and friends and coming to a place you don't even know.
I imagine it was hell. We were cargo on those ships, just like food, animals, and the sugar they took out of here. The ships would come into Christiansted Harbor, where you were processed and sold like you were an animal. They didn't think we were humans. They didn't think we had souls or we could feel. They sent us out like brute animals to work over 250 plantations all over this island at the highest point in the sugar reach. Over 20 tons of sugar came out of St. Croix in 1 year.
Our labor was another man's will. I can't understand. It's like even now I can hear the voices of our ancestors.
Like a suckling child, ripped from mother's milk, all love and all goodness. Bounded and herded up the planks, stuffed in dark holes, breathing air choked with sweat and bottomless tears. Bodies trembling, adrift with pools of vomit of blood, on the sea, on the raging sea, on the long, long journey to the lion's mouth. Many fought the battle every inch of the sea. Others, too weary to fight, found a deathly peace on the cold Atlantic floor. We come on a great pilgrimage to that same ocean, to that unholy burial ground. We come to light an eternal flame in the memories of the millions of our brothers and sisters long gone, but hair, still hair, shining above the horizon so pale. May the good Lord keep them forever and ever in the bosom of his love.
We are their surviving love, though, and that's why we have to remember their story and tell it and use it in our lives. First of all, I don't say slaves. We were captured and put into slavery, and they worked to break down our spirit. That in itself speaks of our humanity. We were enslaved. The things the slavers had to do to us were gross and inhumane, but we never stopped fighting.
Never. We were fighting from the villages to the coffee lines to the ships to the plantations. They were afraid of insurrection and rebellion. That's why they had to be cruel. They put us in chains, they used the whipping post, and they had to murder and torture people.
And if you were a woman, it was worse. Any one of the white men could just take you and rape you. Your mother, father, brother, uncle couldn't do a thing about it. Even if you worked in the big house, you were still a slave. They got some of us thinking we were better than others, but we were all in the same place, enslaved.
Yeah, I like how people talk about they were free men, but that's by someone else's decision and then better to in line. Every step of the way, they showed that our life and our liberty and were used according to their convenience. Now watch this. England, the major European player, abolished slave trade in 1807. They still held slaves though. It wasn't until they didn't end slavery altogether until 1833. That's the sort of mindset that our freedom must come when they're ready to give it.
What a shame. Our emancipation didn't come until 1848.
July 3rd, 1848 will long be remembered as the day when Croatian slaves a measure of freedom from Denmark won. King Christian's decree freeing Picnic before Daddy and Mommy cast tempest to boil like a pot of fungi. The people passed the word along the grapevine. Rebellion was ripe. Explosions could come any time. They stormed into Frederiksted in droves, with raised cane bills and mean-looking torches. The cry was loud and clear. If by sundown our freedom no come, West End to the ground we burn. He rode a white stallion, borrowed a star, commanding his people like a general in war. He told them to avoid bloodshed. Waiting for von Schalten was best, he said. The man was confident his people would be free. He had great influence in the territory. Enter now von Schalten with speech in hand, moving swiftly to read the proclamation. When it was over, there was dancing in the streets. The people had gained the liberty and it tasted very sweet. So today we have good reason to celebrate that happy day in Frederiksted, July 3rd, 1848.
Wow. Imagine someone telling you you could be free, but your mother must stay a slave. I could just hear the people saying, nothing tal goso, nothing tal goso. I will be the first one to throw the whipping post in the sea. You ain't hear they jammed up the artillery with sand? Butthole was a great man. It took a lot of strength to say enough is enough, but no good deed goes unpunished. Some say they banished him. Some say they killed him.
Please tell me please. Please tell me what's happened to Bodo. Please, Mr. Dane, come clean, break your over 100 years of silence and tell me the truth about old Bodo. You said you dressed him up like a general and put him on a ship for Trinidad, or was it Grenada? Why didn't he go to Denmark to answer questions like Van Scholten? Was he not a greater player in the drama than a governor? Oh no, you took him out there, alone on a lonely sea. No weakness to bring word of his fate back to shore. Please tell me please. Tell me, Mr. Dane, why did you make him walk the plank and with cartoon knife tear the skin off his back? Did you put a pillory on a ship, or did you make him build his own? Did you use your broad axe and pour Bordeaux? Please tell me please. Did you put him on his knees and make him curse the day he burst out of slavery? Please tell me please. You, who kept the most detailed records on slaves, have not written one line about the disappearance of Bordeaux? Please tell me please. What have you done with my hero? You said you dropped him off Long Island. Did he ask for a ride? Come clean, Mr. Dane. Please tell me please. Was he who dragged freedom from Von Scholten's hands forced back into slavery on another island? Please tell me please. Like a fish caught in a net, did you throw Bottle wounded into the sea to his death? Please tell me please.
He wasn't the only one punished for wanting his freedom. It was also Admiral Martin King and Moses Roberts too. Many others who today remain unnamed gave the ultimate. The fighting didn't end with von Schulten's proclamation either. The soldiers tried to stop the revolt from spreading into Christiansted, but they couldn't hold back the flame of freedom. They destroyed plantations. The people fought with whatever they had, axes and stones even. All the way up until July 10th, they paved the way. So that's the reason to put emancipation in our hearts.
You're right, I imagine they were thinking about you and me when they were fighting. We are really standing on the shoulders of Bodho, Martin King, and Moses Roberts. Even after the proclamation was read and the revolt ended, it was just living in another form. Right away, the Labor Act of 1849 kept people in the same conditions and the same plantations. It wasn't until 30 years after emancipation in 1878 that Queen Mary would raise her bill. And like you said, we have our own problems with racist thoughts in our society. Our emancipation is our inspiration.
Come, all you people of these once Danish isles. Come celebrate that happy day of long ago in Frederiksted. Blow the conch shell, ring the bell, to the whole world a story tell, when Crucian slaves freed themselves in Frederiksted. Bold, defiant, 8,000 strong, they marched through the town, shouting, "Today, today, our freedom must come." Blow the conch shell, ring the bell, to the whole world a story tell, when Crucian slaves freed themselves in Frederiksted. 12 more years, said the king, and all will be free. But first children, then mother and father. I'm trying my best, you see. I can't go any faster. He must be crazy, cried the people. How picnic could ever be free before they mommy and daddy? Blow the conch shell, ring the bell, to the whole world a story tell, when Crucian slaves freed themselves in Frederiksted. To General Bodo, Moses Roberts, and Martin King, we give our endless praise, but we must never forget Queen Agnes, Queen Mary, and Bottom Belly. Blow the conch shell, ring the bell, to the whole world a story tell, when Crucian slaves freed themselves in Frederiksted.
Hello.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Schroeder. I'm going to go ahead and start out by thanking you for allowing us to use your poem so that the students could get a good understanding of 1848 and the emancipation. And at this time, I'd like to talk to you about the writing process, about what allowed you to start to write, and end up with maybe some advice that you have for some writers. So my first question for you is, how long have you been writing? What's the role of writing in your life?
I wrote my first poem in Blue Mountain in 1984, my very first poem. So, and after that, I wrote quite a number of poems, and I was inspired by poetry reading at the Little Theater several weeks before. And we camped out there. I was a member of the National Guard. And we camped out there and was inspired. I saw St. Croix by night from Blue Mountain for the first time, and I just started writing like that. Then later on, my first book is Walking Through Kashan Roses. That's my story about my early life in St. Croix and my life in the military, and also about prison work. As you may know, I'm a retired prison warden. I would interview old folks. Matter of fact, God bless my aunt, Elvina Samuel Thomas. She's the one that encouraged me to talk to the old folks about stories. And so I followed her advice and did, and I've never regretted it.
Okay. And I know that you've written quite a lot, over 20 books. You have biographies, you have history, you have poetry. What is your, of all of those, which is the one that's your passion? What do you really like to write about? What genre?
I love poetry. But I also love interviewing the old folks, because the old life, that talks about that, and that's, I like very much about old St. Croix. Let me give you an example. I interviewed my Aunt Elvina. She died at 93, and she was born at the state Calcajon like myself. And she told me that toothpaste was not a popular item in the island back in that time, and also in ours. And around 1919, the Red Cross began distributing toothpaste, to the schools. And they came to La Valley. And, the teacher there gave the students the toothpaste, and then the following day he questioned them about how they liked it. And he picked on a little fellow, and the boy couldn't answer. And this little girl volunteered, "Teacher, Fred don't know anything about the toothpaste." "What do you mean you don't know anything about toothpaste?" He said, "This morning I heard my granny talking to Fredo Denny, and she said, 'Well, sissy girl, Fredo bring home one lassenger here last night. He been so sharp, I don't even have to chew itself.'" You saw little little joys like that. I really like. And then I went on. I did a lot of research in the library, and I remember also when I would go on vacation to the States, I will, visit the library in Philadelphia. And there is where I met a lot of the old poets, writing of Langston Hughes, and many others there in Philadelphia, and also in New York. I remember that clearly.
Can you explain their influence on you?
Well, people like Langston Hughes and other poets, the old poets, but they had great influence on my writing. And I would just, start writing like that, things come to me and I'll write about it.
When was the first time you heard about the 1848 Emancipation Story, and what impact did it have on you?
Yeah, well, as a young kid, people will talk about Queen Mary and Bordeaux, but not in any great depth, because kids, you couldn't stay around, you had to be in your own group and things of that sort, but I remember that. Mm-hmm. But I start looking at it closely when I start writing. I would go to WIM Museum, and I also bought a book, I think Florence, I forget her last name, book about the emancipation and the whole history of the Virgin Islands, and studied events. And then later on, when I started writing, I put it together, poems,
Mm-hmm. Can you describe your writing process? How do you get an idea and then take it through to publication?
Well, I was have pencil and some paper in my pocket, but I find that sometimes during the day I'll be searching for a word and can't find it, and lo and behold, at night in my sleep, there's a word. What I've been looking for, I'll get up and write it down. I always had a notebook and pencil by my bed, so I get up in the middle of the night and write something, a poem.
Which of the poems that you've written are you most proud of?
Poems in my first book, Poems Sweet Home, mm-hmm. about St. Croix and things of that sort. That was my first writing and very close to my heart. And I want to mention that in 1984, I went on a tour to Egypt. My wife, my daughter, and some other folks with Dr. Ben. And after I returned home, matter of fact, I wrote 2 poems in Egypt. Nubian writer and another word I can't recall right now. One, and I wrote that, and that was actually influenced by my visit to Egypt. Yeah.
Your work is so beautiful that we would like it to stay around a very long time. And that was one of my reasons for getting your work and putting it in the hands of high school students. Is there any particular way that you would like your writing to continue on? Is there anything, if you can talk a little bit about the legacy through your writing that you would like to see?
Well, I would like people to read my books. You don't buy them, go to the library and read them there. Try to take them out, But I believe we have to write our story. Nobody's not going to write it for us. And even if somebody write a story, it'll be different in a way because we write from our feeling, the things that we experience. We live here in the islands, and things that move us, so it's not artificial there. It's the real thing. And that's make a difference, see? And so we have to keep that, encourage the young to keep on writing, stories, poetry, but write.
What advice would you give for a young writer today?
Read, and write. Go in the library, take out books, and even at school, the library there, and read and write.
You, of course, love St. Croix very much. Can you talk about that passion that you have for St. Croix and how it gets into your writing?
Well, as I mentioned that when I first started writing, my first book naturally is poetry. And then later on, the first person that I interviewed was my Aunt Elvina. And she was in her 80s at that time. She passed away in 93. And she would tell me about old St. Croix, the way people lived, And so I wrote that, her story. I have her stories in several of my books. Callaloo, Under the Tamarind Tree, and another one.
What do you think we need to remember from those old stories? Because some people would say, well, that happened a long time ago. It's time to move on. But what should we understand or keep from those old stories?
The way we live, and not only that, take, for instance, a tree. If you take the bark from a tree, it dies. So our stories contribute to our life as Crucians and Torments Virgin Islanders, the way we live. 100 years from now, if there's nothing written, we cease to exist as a people, and that's what keeps us, our culture, so to speak, alive, our writing.
Talk a little bit about how that's important for us to remember the people who came from the past and why it's so important to remember. Like, for instance, you talked about Bodo, Queen Mary. Why is it so important that young people keep that memory alive?
We got to respect, the memory and keep alive the memory of the old, freedom fighters, who paved the way, so to speak, for us. And if we don't respect that, we're not going to respect ourselves.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I would like them to see is kind of like the connection between past and present. And you shared a poem with me earlier where you saw that connection to and what's happening. Can you talk about that or share that poem?
Yes, because as a young fella growing up here in St. Croix, whenever a crime, serious crime was committed, People talk about it for months. You know, you're going to vegetable market, the fish market, and people talking about what, you know, that crime that was committed, you know, so that was not a part of us, you see? And so I was thinking about that some time ago, our present crime situation. And I penned, this poem is entitled, I Just Don't Know. Weren't we, you and I, snatched like a bird from its nest, packed like sardines into a belly of a ship? You breathe in my feces, I line in your blood, and that tortuous journey across the sea. Weren't we, you and I, sold on the block like cattle to the highest bidder? Didn't we, you and I, yoked like oxen under the heavy hand of the whip, labor in cotton and sugarcane fields, from sun up to sundown? Didn't we, you and I, our spirits sore, our skin tone, eyes red and swollen from tears, cry out to the same God, pleading with him not to forsake his own children? So, please tell me please, why are we killing one another?
That's poignant. Is there anything else that you would like to say that I haven't asked before? Something that you would like to leave with?
Well, I recall my time as a warden. I was assistant warden at the time at the Richmond Penitentiary. And Miss Golfin was the lady's name. She used to help us out there, you know, bring books. So we had a library corner in the prison. And in bold letters were these words: life is an open book, but is of little value to those who can read it. Read, read, read. I'll never forget that.
And thank you very much. You continue to be an inspiration. You've been an inspiration to me.
Yeah.
And thank you once again for the opportunity to allow us to use your poems in our summer project.
Let me end with a haiku, since haiku is my real love.
I love it.
And this speak, I remember living at Friedensburg, and I could hear the young fella. I could hear I call it music. My father has cart, coming into the village, because every donkey cart, every horse cart had a different song to it. You know, so when I start writing haiku, I remember that song. And here's it. Over the road of time, the sound of my father's horse cart coming from afar. And to this day, I could still hear that song. You know? Mm-hmm. Every donkey cart, every horse cart had a little music to it. As it rolled, the steel of the wheel ran over the rocks. You see? So I can hear that song of my father's horse cart coming through the village.
Beautiful. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Clearly road, clearly road, let the slave them pass. We going for our freedom.
We're free. Once upon a time, not too long ago, we weren't. Our ancestors were scorned and hung, bruised, beaten, broken, but still they sung. A simple field song that held their spirits high, not knowing how far it would go, how far it came from a soft cry. We're not done though. We're not done sowing what we had to sow. We will continue to sow freedom in our hearts and souls and words. We will be heard. We're still oppressed. We are. We'll fix that. You, me, us. Through strength, through trust. We won't let it be said that our generation was content with this injustice because we weren't and we aren't. We want equality, justice. Is it so wrong for us to want what we're entitled to as a race, as humans? No, it's not. So we will stand with our fists held high. So we won't just be free of shackles, but free of fear. Fair for us and a burden fair for our future generations. So trust. We'll stand because we as people aren't done yet. We're doing this for our ancestors who fought for us, for our future generations who are defenseless, and for ourselves who deserve better.